NCD Electoral officers explain what to expect during polling. PM queries DSIP funding results in Kavieng. And Mount Hagen General says drug shortage critical.
This is National EMTV News with Helen Sayer.
Good evening and thanks for joining me for Tuesday's news. Voters in the nation's capital will only have one-day polling. This was revealed to candidates for the regional seat and Northwest open seat in the nation's capital. The candidates were briefed on what to expect during polling and counting. Polling will be conducted in one location, however, there will be multiple polling booths. Adelaide Sirix Kari has more.
NCD regional candidates and Northwest candidates were presented detailed information on what to expect during polling and counting. NCD Electoral Manager Terence Hitinu explained that previously there were multiple polling sites for the same ward at a distance. These elections will be different. Voting sites for each area will be at one designated area with multiple polling booths that are separated by alphabetical orders depending on the population of the area.
We're not splitting and putting polling booths kilometers apart, no. In a big place, like, give me an example, I'll give you an example, like this Boroko, we have voters who are about 3,000 to 4,000 there. So we have alpha split is Boroko, and we put them all at Coronation Primary School. So all the splits have been making each other, all the polling booths will be there. So one team at Coronation Primary School, and we have about 6 booths in there.
Another change is the ink that is usually painted on the fingernail. For the 2017 election, the smaller finger will be dipped into the ink to ensure the voter does not rub off the ink and vote multiple times.
This time around, they won't be painting your fingernails by the small liquid stick or liquid cotton band or something. No, it will be entire dipping of the index finger right down.
Also, the issue of postal voting was brought up for the working class and those who were unable to reach polling booths. Hitunu said the Electoral Commission is looking into other avenues.
Postal voting covers a range of class of people, even those in the hospital, those who are hospitalized, our mama were maternity leave, no stuff lost it too. Workers will be traveling on that day, duty calls, they'll travel at the time of polling day. It covers all this class of people.
This then brings the issue of whether or not voting days should be made a public holiday.
So when I got here, I brought up the idea and I said, no, we have to have a public holiday. After I learned that a lot of working class people missed out in the last election, I brought this idea forward and I told my assistant manager as well as the steering committee, because we have to make a public holiday. So
NCD regional candidates who attended the program told EMTV while the information was vital, some queries still remain.
Very informative. Good time to ask questions and know the answers. I think some answers, I don't think they're satisfactory. Good thing to come out and get to know the officers who's going to be conducting the election for NCD rather. So we get to know them, they get to know us.
Polling dates for NCD is set for the 27th of June and counting on the 30th. Adelaide Sirix Kari, National EMTV News.
Moresby Northeast candidates with their scrutineers were briefed by returning officers about the LPV system and their polling conduct this morning in Port Moresby. This meeting will enable candidates and their scrutineers to understand the procedures of LPV voting system and their responsibilities during polling.
The history of LPV, limited preferential voting.
At least a quorum of the total 51 candidates contesting Moresby Northeast turned up for the candidates and scrutineers briefing facilitated by returning officers despite the heavy campaign trail.
Actually, we expect 51 candidates to attend, but today I think we have we started the briefing, about 13 have attended, and we have I think a couple more joined after, so probably might have gone up to 20.
Returning officer Thomas Ruango said this is an important meeting that will educate them to understand the LPV voting system and for scrutineers to know their conduct during polling. Many of the participants who have turned up were taught about the procedures of LPV voting system, an important aspect of which is how to prevent informal voting.
So if you put the box numbers according to the preferences, that is a formal vote. And if you're more educated and you want to put the box number and the candidate's name, that is also that is formal. But in Papua New Guinea, I've seen and I've experienced that because we don't have this voter awareness, most of the ballot papers become informal, meaning that they don't meet the requirements of LPV. And along the way, too many good candidates lose their votes.
Must be noticed recorded 51 candidates, which is the highest number of candidates vying for the seat against sitting MP Labi Amayu. The electorate was one of the first in the country to try the LPV system, which was later rolled across Papua New Guinea. Eric Arupma, National EMTV News.
Prime Minister Peter O'Neill has questioned the use of District Services Improvement Program or DSIP funding totaling 40 million kina for Kavieng district. He said DSIP funding has delivered much change for many districts around the country, but claims this is not the same for Kavieng. The Prime Minister said despite questions over the use of Kavieng's DSIP, the national government has continued to directly fund projects in New Ireland province.
The Prime Minister took a swipe at incumbent Kavieng MP Ben Micah, saying Micah should focus on serving the neglected people of Kavieng. Mr. O'Neill, who recently visited Kavieng, said there is no evidence of development from the more than 40 million kina in DSIP delivered to the district over the past 4 years. He questioned why the 40 million kina has not been spent on improving Kavieng. Mr. O'Neill said when he went into Parliament in 2002, there was no support given to districts in the country and all services were run down. But when they went into government in 2012, they changed all these, and now all districts receive direct funding. Mr. O'Neill said work is about to finish on the road to Buluminski and renovations have been completed on the Kavieng Hospital and airport fencing, and many roads and jetties are directly funded by the national government. The Prime Minister said the personal attacks by the Kavieng member are unfortunate. He went on to say that a leader should be able to take criticism, learn from it, and strive to do a better job at delivering development and services for the people. Deli Waigeno, National, EMTV News.
Meanwhile, EMTV contacted Kavieng MP Ben Micah for comment today. Mr. Micah said a detailed statement has been prepared, however it has not been received as yet. The Office of the Bougainville Electoral Commissioner has successfully delivered the first community government election of the autonomous Bougainville government. Despite limited funding, it was described as a fair, free and peaceful election, enhancing the democratic process in Bougainville.
Bougainville's acting electoral commissioner George Manu has confirmed that provisional results of the non-urban community government election had been certified without change and submitted to the Community Government Department of the Autonomous Bougainville Government. However, only 5 community governments' constituent wards have been affected because the boundaries were not fully defined.
Elections were held to form a total of 43 non-urban community governments. 10 wards out of 425 did not have their boundaries fully defined at the time of the election, and therefore elections for these wards will be held at a later date.
A review on the community government election and data will also be conducted that needs to confirm several provincial information.
More than 60% of the elections held were contested by more than one candidate. Less than 1% of ballots were informal, and there were only 5 complaints raised, which mainly related to the legislated time available for candidates' nomination and voting.
Meanwhile, all community governments now have less than 14 days to conduct their first meeting to elect their chairpersons and vice chairperson. Failure to do so is a matter that the Community Government Department of the Autonomous Bougainville Government will consider.
They have their first meeting. They now have 14 days to ensure that they meet. The community government have their first meeting.
Mr. Manu says he wants to see all non-urban community governments established throughout the autonomous region of Bougainville. In Buka, Fabian Hakelitz, National EMTV News.
Drug shortage in Mount Hagen, weapons and drugs confiscated following foot patrols in Leh, and brutal killing in Medang. Those stories and more when we come back. Welcome back. The Mount Hagen Provincial Hospital just released a statement that the hospital is experiencing a serious shortage of drugs and medical consumables. Acting Chief Executive Officer of the Western Highlands Provincial Health Authority, Dr. Paulus Ripa, says if the situation does not improve soon, it may have a hostile effect to the patients. Like other hospitals and clinics in the country, Dr. Ripa said it is posing a threat to patient care.
The hospital has not been receiving all the supplies that they had hoarded since the beginning of this year. They have been receiving only 30% of the items ordered that kept the hospital functioning. The hospital has been forced to work without surgical equipment, IV fluids, hand gloves and laboratory reagents. Without hand gloves, doctors and nurses are working under trying conditions to deliver babies in the labor ward. They were also facing difficulty treating patients without necessary first-line drugs and do procedures like putting in chest drains without necessary equipment to drain urine. Yet the hospital staffs are working under pressure using what is available to treat patients. The Western Highlands Provincial Health Authority was using other means to alleviate the problem. The authority had approved 250,000 kina from the project account to allow the hospital to buy urgently needed drugs, laboratory and medical supplies. The medicines in the pharmacy are critically low, and if they don't receive their supplies soon, the hospital will be without medicine. If this situation continues, the hospital will be forced to screen and diagnose patients only and refer them to private pharmacies to buy their own drugs. This report by Dr. Ripa follows report from Leh City about the general shortage of anti-malaria drugs and antibiotics in urban clinics. The National Department of Health is responsible for the supplying of drugs and medical consumables, but they have not been able to supply everything. Last year, the provincial authority spent over 800,000 kina to assist the area medical store to buy drugs. Dr. Ripa urged the public to look after themselves and avoid getting sick or injured during this election period, as the situation is beyond their control. Vasinata Yama, National EMTV News, Mount Hagen.
Regular foot patrols have paid off in Leh this week with the arrest of at least 4 suspects and the confiscation of a cache of homemade weapons and drugs. The patrol initially discovered drugs bound for sale on a suspect. They then proceeded to search his house where weapons were found.
The suspects were arrested and brought to the Leh Central Police Station. The cache of homemade weapons and drugs confiscated by police were found in the home of one of the men. The initial suspect was caught by a police foot patrol at Nawai block with packs of marijuana bound for markets in Leh. The arrest is just an addition to the string of successes enjoyed by Leh police since the establishment of various initiatives, including the police sector patrol and foot beats.
The sector patrol has been working very well in the city. We've been able to minimize the high level of crime in the city. Compared to the past when we didn't have the sector patrol, there was a high level of serious crimes in the city. Stolen motor vehicle, armed robberies and any other crimes.
Meanwhile, public support is at an all-time high. This morning, former Police Commissioner Peter Aigilo, interviewed by NBC Morobe, said the success by Leh Police has boosted public confidence.
Man, you got plenty more man married come outside and walk about, especially old men and women walking around late in the afternoon, which is unusual. You know, got plenty of time also make him less loud. So it shows that the police method they're using here is beginning to produce results.
The Facebook page is more of an awareness page, and also it's for us to interact with the public. We would like the public to give us some information of crimes being committed, like for instance, areas of attention which police need to look at. if there needs to be more food between certain areas where drugs are being sold on the streets, things like that, or general interaction with the public. So.
Yesterday, another big plus for Lay police. Units deployed at midnight waited until 2 a.m. and stopped what could have been a major armed robbery and vandalism at Nadzab Airport. While the Metropolitan Superintendent hasn't openly drawn attention to his strategy and planning or successes, he has commended police men and women for the good work. Scott Waide, National EMTV News, Lay.
Police in Madang have begun investigation into the killing of an elderly man at the early hours of Saturday morning in the Transgogol area. Provincial Police Commander Superintendent Jacob Singura says this killing is a result of an ongoing conflict in the area since 2015. Several houses were also burnt during the attack.
We were taken to Transgogol area on Saturday morning by Madang police. Inside the police car, officers explained that the clash had initially started in 2015 following the sexual assault of a young girl. Clashes have been ongoing in the area. According to police, there have been 3 deaths. What has stood out have been the gruesome nature of the killings. When we arrived at the crime scene, what confronted us was the gruesome nature of the killing. The hands, feet, and other body parts had been cut up and thrown on the ground. The attackers also burned the man's body parts. Armed relatives of the man were still in shock when we arrived.
It is an isolated, and it is the continuous fights and the troubles of in that area that is still continuing up to today.
Police say the fighting started on Friday night and continued into Saturday morning, resulting in the killing of the elderly man. Provincial Police Commander Jacob Singura said police have yet to establish the root cause of the problem. For now, people are not cooperating with police in bringing in suspects or providing information to assist police.
Nobody's, the people out there are not willing to give information to police as to the suspects. That has been one real letdown for police. Thus, we cannot go further in apprehending those responsible.
Meanwhile, in a separate incident yesterday, 2 people were killed and several others sustained injuries following clashes in Midiba village along the north coast of Madang. At least 19 houses were burnt. Police say the fighting started on Sunday night from a drinking brawl that resulted in the killing of a man. The relatives of the victim retaliated yesterday, burning down houses and killing another person. Mata Luis, National EMTV News, Madang.
The National Court in Port Moresby has allowed the policeman who allegedly assaulted a university lecturer in 2014 out on bail. Constable Philip Bomal from Simbu Province was this morning granted 1,000 kina court bail. Bail was given on conditions that Bomal was kept in custody without being committed at a committal court.
Bomal was arrested and charged with 2 counts of armed robbery and attempted murder under the Criminal Code Act last week. The arrest by members of the Internal Investigation Unit comes 3 years after the alleged offence occurred in 2014. Now, police alleged that Bomal and some other police officers from the Hohola police station assaulted Francis S.C., a former UPNG lecturer from the School of Business Administration, after a confrontation at the Manu Outer Port. Last Friday, EMTV News ran a story on the injuries the complainant claimed he suffered from the alleged offence, which cost him thousands of kina on medical bills. The former lecturer says he is now without a job and is calling on police investigators to ensure the officers involved are dealt with. Meanwhile, the Waigani National Court has questioned why it took 3 years for IIU to arrest Bomal. Bomal's bail conditions are that he be transferred to another police station and that he should not be in possession of any firearms. Tekla Gunga, National, MTV News.
The 2015 Judges Annual Report has identified 10 factors that contribute to the increase in the backlog of court cases at both national and Supreme Courts. Trying not to disclose details of the report, Chief Justice Sir Salamo Injia made this statement during the presentation of the report today.
The 2015 Judges Annual Report was presented to the Governor-General, Bob Dadai, at the Government House this morning.
When you have a backlog of cases going back many years, obviously that results in low productivity in terms of the disposition of cases before the courts. And in the report, we have identified 10 reasons or causes for this backlog of cases.
Apart from reasons identified as contributing factors to increase in backlog of cases, the Chief Justice says the report also highlights complaints that have been processed at the National Judicial Services.
And there's a detailed report on the number of complaints that have been received and the relevant particulars of those complaints and how the judiciary, through its own internal dispute, internal complaint investigation mechanism, has addressed those.
The report will be presented to the Parliament Speaker when Parliament next sits. Meanwhile, the Judicial Services would like to see the report tabled in Parliament.
The judiciary would like to see these reports, when they reach Parliament, through the office of the Speaker, that these reports be tabled in Parliament and debated.
Tekla Gunga, National, MTV News.
The Mosby Arts Theatre will be staging 2 plays this coming Friday, Saturday and Sunday. This will be the final time MAT will be showing the plays Roman Invasion and Zombie Attack. Roman Invasion is set 1,000 years ago when Roman Catholic missionaries colonized Papua New Guinea. The play centers around the limited knowledge Catholic missionaries had on sorcery in PNG, while Zombies Attack is a pretend situation of how to prepare for a zombie attack and eventually killing the zombies. Tickets are selling at the Baroko Food World and Waterfront in Konidobu. And now looking at our finance news, the kina closed unchanged at $0.3145 in the interbank markets. At Bank South Pacific, your kina was buying $0.307 $0.4072 Australian dollars, $0.2696 euro and 33.6 Japanese yen. Looking at commodity prices at New York close, cocoa closed lower while gold, coffee and copra closed higher. Palm oil, crude oil and copper closed lower. And on the stock market, the Dow Jones closed at 22.25 points lower, the ASX closed at 80.57 points lower, and the All Ordinaries closed at 78.47 points lower. Among stories after the break, a CNN exclusive from Iraq in the battle against ISIS. Stay with us for details. Welcome back to the news. Celebrations marking World Environment Day were held near the Napa Napa plant site in Port Moresby yesterday. Locals and students from neighboring schools joined petroleum company Puma Energy for a host of activities, including tree planting. Eric Harupma reports.
Good environment governance and safe environment practices is what Papua New Guinea's biggest energy contributor, Puma Energy, is emphasizing on during the World Environment Day.
Papua New Guinea is one of the absolute gems in our world. It is a beautiful, beautiful environment which we must be responsible for. Whether it be when we look after our own rubbish, whether it be we care for a plant, whether we plant for the future. These things are absolutely critical.
Puma Energy is the main supplier of petroleum in the country, but at the moment they are trying to be more environmentally friendly in reducing carbon emissions. Embracing the World Environment Day theme, connecting people to nature, Puma Energy employees and students from UPNG and 5 schools around the plant site Baroni, Tatana, Roku, Costa Rica planted trees, drew pictures and pasted ecological footprints on walls to mark this day. The environment has been facing a lot of stress due to the effects of climate change, which draw international advocacy on ways to control the industrial energy-driven carbon emissions. Implementing policies on biodiversity management and safer ecological practices like planting trees, mangroves and restricting carbon is very important to manage the environment.
With sea level rise, of course, you lose coastline. And mangroves is a very good candidate to begin to put some protection on the shoreline. And so it's only fitting that we take an interest in mangroves, and wherever we've got a beachfront that's got rubbish along the beach, maybe clean it, and then maybe we can plant trees, and that will give us a buffer zone in terms of the erosive forces of the waves.
While the government and people have been urged to be proactive and resilient in protecting the environment against the global effects of climate change. Eric Arupma, National MTV News.
The Australian Maritime Safety Authority, or AMSA, has banned the PNG vessel Kunga Chief from all Australian ports for 3 months following regulatory and safety violations. The Kunga Chief is owned by Swire Shipping and registered in Papua New Guinea. A statement released by the AMSA said the ship did not maintain critical equipment such as fire extinguishers and engine systems. There were inadequate food provisions and living conditions were unsanitary. The AMSA also said the crew had exceeded working hours and were underpaid. The AMSA said the failure was on the part of the ship's operator. The AMSA's identification of regulatory breaches now throws into question the credibility of PNG's maritime safety regulator, the NMSA. Overseas in Iraq, about 100,000 children are caught in the crossfire in western Mosul, the last major stronghold for ISIS. The United Nations says children are being killed, injured and used as human shield as government-led forces try to retake the rest of the city, and the UN is calling on both sides to stop attacks on civilians. The world is knowing a lot more about the suffering in Mosul from those who have escaped and others who risked their lives to save them. And a warning, the images you're about to see are disturbing.
They stumble towards the Iraqi troops. They're breathless. Their voices are shaking from fear and shock. They use single sentences that seem to hardly encompass the scope of what it is that they've actually just been through.
لا إله إلا الله والله انتقمنا من هالكفار قبل 20 يوم بدنا نطلع من البورصة مسكين ضرب أخوي 4 طلقات براسه منو؟ أخويا 20 سنة عمره تتلا داعش تتلا والله تتلا والله كتلا والله كتلا بس الله ينصركم سيارة
And as ISIS is squeezed into even smaller territory, the civilians they're holding hostage are running out of food.
والله عنا ناكل عصيدة والله عصيدة
It was only enough to feed the children, to try to keep them from crying out. She and her husband, they went hungry. On the front line helping the Iraqi army is Dave Eubanks. He's American, ex-Special Forces, and with his team of Free Burma Rangers, volunteer medics. Just days earlier, ISIS massacred dozens of people who were just trying to make a run for it, and Dave was called to the scene.
We saw these 13 bodies, and we saw movement. Here they are. Look at that wall.
A man, alive, and a little girl who creeps out from under her dead mother's hijab, where she'd been hiding for 2 days, hugging her mother's corpse. They use the tank for cover to move out, dragging those they just saved past the corpses of those who perished.
Bulldozer's coming.
The little girl, she has not yet spoken, not a single word. No one even knows her name. The next morning, they spotted even more movement.
We ran, got across the road, went through rubble like this, and ISIS is on 3 sides of us. They could hear them talking, crawled through, found a girl up the street, ISIS is shooting, threw a line to her. She tied herself. 3 days, no sleep, no water, wounded.
Much of western Mosul, it's already apocalyptic, and the fight for the last square kilometers, it's going to be so much worse than anything we've seen before. There's no past blueprint for this kind of warfare. No one has fought an enemy like ISIS, holding civilians hostage in a dense urban battlefield. We go to a clinic that's further back from the front line. There's an old man who can't speak from the shock. And a little girl. Her name's Maryam, she's 10, and there with her older sister Inam. They say a mortar hit their house just as they were trying to make a run for it. One sister they know is dead. They saw her lifeless body. The others are buried under the rubble of their home, but ISIS still controls the area. The reality of what she's just said, perhaps not quite sinking in. Or maybe she's just looking for any distraction from a loss that she cannot yet fully comprehend.
They are the faces of evil, 2 of the 3 attackers behind the London terror attack now named. One of them well known to British security services as police investigate their deadly rampage. Their desperate search continues for a young Australian woman not seen since Saturday night.
The latest news from Scotland Yard is that all 12 of those arrested following raids in the east of London this week in relation to the London Bridge terror attack have now been released without charge. There is concerning news, though, about one Australian, Sarah Zelenak. Her family and friends haven't heard from her since the attack on Saturday night, and they are becoming increasingly worried about her welfare and whereabouts. Sarah Zelenak, now missing in London for more than 48 hours. The 21-year-old was given a last-minute night off from her babysitting job. She was last seen on London Bridge, separated from friends when the panic began. Her distraught mother is heading from Brisbane to London to look for her. Darwin man Andrew Morrison was stabbed. He's flying home. Brisbane woman Candice Hedge is recovering in hospital after being stabbed in the throat. A 4th missing Australian hasn't been named. Among the dead is 32-year-old James McMullen, described by his sister as an inspiration, and Canadian Christine Archibald, who died in her fiancé's arms on London Bridge.
What is he shooting?
New video has been released of a man caught up in the horror, filming terrified people trying to escape the deadly attack.
It's all going on right now. People running, I don't know out of where.
We now know more about 2 of the attackers. 27-year-old Karam Butt was a British citizen, born in Pakistan, lived in East London. He was known to police and to MI5. He's been reported over fears he had been radicalised. There was a terrorism investigation into his activities in 2015. He also appeared in a British TV documentary, Jihadis Next Door. 30-year-old Rashid Redouani also lived in Barking and claimed to be Moroccan and Libyan. He wasn't known to authorities. Police are trying to establish their movements before they drove the hired van into pedestrians and went on a stabbing rampage. Thousands of mourners gathered under the shadow of Tower Bridge in pain, grief and defiance, pausing for a moment of silence for the victims.
This is our city. These are our values, and this is our way of life. London will never be broken by terrorism.
And more arrests in the city's east as new suspects are taken for questioning in an investigation police are describing as fast-moving.
Trukai Sports is next. Stay tuned for details.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome to Trukai Sports. PNG Kumul's coach Michael Marum has a tough task ahead of this year's Rugby League World Cup. CEO of the Rugby League World Cup 2017 committee, Andrew Hill, says the Kumuls will have home ground advantage, but it will not be easy making it through to the quarterfinals.
Boas, Watson Boas to Armian.
With 3 home matches scheduled to be played in PNG, Hill says players and coaching staff of the PNG Kumuls have much to play for in front of the home crowd.
The weight of the expectation here for the PNG population is that Michael and the Kumuls go through to the quarterfinal in Melbourne, most likely if they were to win through their pool matches. So I think that is a realistic expectation that the people should have of their national team. And of course, once you get into the finals, who knows what will happen.
PNG fans abroad will be hoping the Kumuls qualify for the quarterfinals, which will be played in Australia.
People in interest looking at that quarterfinal already, not only from New Guinea itself, but people living in Australia. So I think the expectation and bars set there. I think people will get out of their pool games and come down to Melbourne for that quarterfinal. So we'd love to see the colour come to Melbourne for a quarterfinal.
Hill says the inclusion of the Hunters in the Queensland Interest Super Cup has changed rugby league in PNG. The recent success of the Kumuls beating Fiji and Cook Island sets a positive platform for what could be a successful campaign for the PNG team.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the success of PNG. For them to be able to play in front of their home crowd, the pride that those players and the coaching staff will have, I'm sure will be a great incentive for them to do their very best.
Hill expects to leave a lasting legacy for rugby league in Papua New Guinea. He hopes to see more young children play the game.
Ultimately, that's the success of the Australian Kangaroos. Those players have been playing the game from the age of 6, 7 all the way through. And I think from a legacy point of view, if we can get the game played in PNG at a very early age in a safe, family-friendly environment, I think that will be the biggest legacy piece we'll ever leave.
Elijah Levet, National, EMTV Sports.
On the eve of departure for their World Cup qualifying campaign, head coach of the PNG men's national football team, Fleming Seretslev, says the team is 100% ready to go. Speaking at the national team's final training session before leaving for Honiara, the coach says the team is ready to do the job.
After a long and grueling 2 weeks in camp, the PNG squad looked sharp, fit and ready to face the Solomon Islands in their last training session before departure. While the absence of 3 of their overseas-based players due to dual citizenship issues was notable, Fleming Seretslev believes that he has the team ready to continue their qualifying campaign.
Yeah, it's still a good squad. Of course, we had hoped that we could have the dual citizenship ready for those 3 players, but we didn't succeed in this. Maybe there might be a chance for game number 2 against Solomon, but actually I'm not counting on this.
The squad leaves tomorrow morning for Honiara, and Seretslev was quick to point out the assistance received from the high-performance unit in Port Moresby, with none of his players facing any serious injuries or complaints.
Actually had problems with as well Patrick Asa and David Brown, but we have had extremely good help from the High Performance Center, where we have had as well a physio and masseurs to help us more or less every day. So I'm very happy with the cooperation we have with the High Performance Center.
Star striker Nigel Dabinyaba will miss out on the first leg against the Solomon Islands due to a yellow card, although the side welcomes back David Brown, who looked sharp in training this afternoon. Papua New Guinea will meet the Solomon Islands on Thursday afternoon at 5 p.m. PNG time. Jeremy Moggy, National TV Sports.
The Gomis off-season rugby league in Mount Hagen saw Kum Crushers winning the A-grade grand final yesterday with 8 points against Young Guns, who managed only 6. In the B-grade, Warakum Bulls thrashed Kum Crushers 14-0. Sponsor of the off-season league and sitting member for Hagen Open, William Duma, officially kicked off the grand final on Sunday.
The big grades of Warakum Bulls and Kum Crushers went into the grand final. In the first half, the game was in favor of the Bulls, leading with 4 points and Kum Crushers 0. Both sides played with an impressive display of skills, having less errors and few penalties. The combination of Warakum Bulls' 5'8" Slider Blue and hooker Joe Epoya fed the forwards with excellent ball work, resulting in a lot of line breaks. The Bulls gained more distance into the Crushers' territory, and in the second half, the Bulls laid on another 10 points, thrashing Kum Crushers 14-0. League sponsor and founder since year 2000, William Duma, was pleased with the outcome, and he named some now famous products of the off-season league in Menziere, Dion Aye, Simon Young, and Nixon Kolo.
Papua New Guinea World Cup team of 2007. 11 black players, 11 black products of Gomis off-season league only play like World Cup 2007. That is our records. No God rugby league will take it away from us. We did it. Even now too, plenty of products of Gomis off-season work like play England, Australia, all over the world. If it's on SB Hunters Cup, as a sponsor, I am very, very proud.
In the A-grade match, Young Guns and Kum Crushers went into the finals. Both teams played a tough and tight game in the first half, but the Young Guns on point with the fitness, scoring 4 points and missing a conversion kick. In the second half, Guns got a penalty kick for a delayed tackle by the Crushers and scored 6 points to the Crushers 4. Minutes before full-time, the Crushers came in hard with the excellent game plan and ball pattern, winning the grand final 8 points to Guns, losing by 2 points. League coordinator Billy Gao officially closed this year's 17th off-season league.
Since 2011, from 2012 to 2015, 17 years has found the
Basenata Yama, National EMTV Sports, Mount Hagen.
Trukai Sports continues after the break. Stay with us.
Trukai Sports.
Welcome back to Trukai Sports. Former PNG sprinter Terry Sepp passed away in Kavieng on Sunday afternoon. Sepp was a member of the 4x100-meter relay squad that attended the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Sepp attended the 1995 then South Pacific Games in Tahiti, but could not get on the relay team, which won the gold medal and set the PNG national record of 40.29 seconds, which still stands today. However, he competed in the 1997 mini South Pacific Games in Pago Pago and reached the final of the 100 meters and was part of the silver medal winning relay team in the 4x100 meters. Sepp holds the equal fastest hand timing for the 60-meter event, in which he clocked 6.7 seconds along with other sprinting greats. And that wraps up Trukai Sports. The weather details when we come back.
Trukai Sports. Trukai Sports.
The weather details are proudly brought to you by Dulux Weather Shield. Worth doing with Dulux.
Looking at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow, in the southern region only, mostly fine and windy, becoming partly cloudy later in Port Moresby, mostly fine and windy in Daru, chance of morning shower or two, then partly cloudy in Kerema, and partly cloudy then mostly fine in Alotau and Popondetta.
The weather details are proudly brought to you by Dulux Weather Shield. With doing with Dulux.
And that's the way it is this Tuesday, the 6th of June. From all of us here at EMTV, pleasant viewing. Good night.